If you've ever had someone try to rewrite your life with a screenshot, you'll understand why my hands started shaking when I realized I couldn't find my best friend on Facebook. One day, Mitch was my constant. The next, it was like he'd been erased. Like 22 years of friendship could be deleted with a tap of someone else's thumb. I'm 27, and Mitch has been in my life since kindergarten. We were 5 years old when we met. He's the person who knows my childhood address, my favorite comfort food, the embarrassing nickname my dad still uses when he's trying to make me laugh. He's not the guy friend. He's the brother my parents never had to sign papers for. And that's why what happened felt so unreal. It started with his girlfriend Felicity, 32, polished, charming, in the way that makes you feel like you should sit up straighter. For months, she'd been asking questions that didn't fit. Not normal getting to know you questions, more like she was trying to force a story between Mitch and me that never existed. When you lived together, how did you handle his mood after work? How did his parents treat you back then? What did you do when he got messy? Every time I reminded her, we've only ever been friends. Then, last week, she crossed a line so hard I felt my skin go cold. She texted me out of nowhere saying she was in pain. I asked what was wrong, because I'm not a monster, and I assumed something serious. Instead, she sent me a long, graphic message about her sex life with Mitch and asked me for advice. I stared at my phone like it had insulted me. I told her immediately I didn't want to hear any of it, and that she needed to talk to Mitch or someone close to her. Within minutes, she called me, and the moment I answered, her voice turned sharp. "This was a test," she said, "and you failed." She claimed my discomfort proved I was secretly in love with Mitch. I tried to laugh because it was so absurd it didn't feel real, but my throat wouldn't cooperate. And then came the part that changed everything. The next day, I went to message Mitch good luck for his exam. I couldn't find him. My messages wouldn't go through. My calls hit voicemail like I didn't exist. And in the silence, one terrifying thought took root. What if she didn't just test me? What if she poisoned him against me too? I need to explain who Mitch is to me, because without that, what Felicity did won't fully land. Mitch and I met in kindergarten, 5 years old, both missing our front teeth in that uneven way kids do. I remember he was crying because his mom was late, and I handed him my snack like it was a peace treaty. After that, we became a pair. The kind teachers separate during tests because we'd whisper jokes and get each other in trouble. We grew up side by side through every awkward stage, braces, bad haircuts, and those first teenage heartbreaks that feel like the world is ending. When my parents fought during my middle school years, Mitch would show up with a video game and sit on my bedroom floor like a quiet guard dog, just being there until the shouting stopped. When his dad lost his job, my mom started packing extra food by accident, and Mitch would carry it home without making a big deal out of it. That's what our friendship was built on: presence, consistency, the kind of loyalty that isn't loud. And it was always platonic. I know people love the best friends secretly in love story. It makes everything neat and romantic. But Mitch and I never fit that. We've talked about it before, actually talked about it, the way you do when you're tired of outsiders projecting their fantasies onto your life. If we ever dated, Mitch once said, pulling a face, it would feel like kissing a cousin. I threw a French fry at him. Don't ruin fries with that sentence. We laughed. And that was it. No tension, no longing. Just the comfortable cringe of two people who genuinely see each other as family. For the past 3 years, I've been in a committed relationship with Jason, 29, steady, the type who doesn't need to perform confidence because he actually has it. He knows Mitch. He gets our dynamic. The first time they met, Jason shook Mitch's hand. Then a minute later, they were arguing about the best superhero movie like they'd known each other for years. Jason trusted me. Mitch respected him. It worked. And Mitch had dated a few women over the years. Some of them I liked, some I tolerated, some were clearly temporary. But I always tried. I never wanted to be the girl best friend stereotype. So I stayed polite, gave space, made sure any hangouts were comfortable and appropriate. A year ago, Mitch started dating Felicity. At first, she seemed fine. Pleasant smile, good manners, the kind of woman who brings wine to dinner and remembers your birthday after hearing it once. She wasn't warm exactly, but she was socially smooth. I noticed the condescension early. She'd tilt her head slightly when she talked to me, like she was speaking to someone younger and less experienced, which technically I was. 5 years isn't huge, but she used it like a badge. When you get to my age, she'd say, "You'll understand," or "You'll see what I mean when you're older." I'd smile, bite back sarcasm, and let it slide. I didn't want conflict. I didn't want Mitch feeling like he had to choose between us. And honestly, I assumed it would fade once she got used to our friendship. Then Mitch mentioned something that made my stomach tighten. He told me Felicity had asked for all his social media passwords. Not as a casual, hey, can you show me that funny message type thing? All of them. Instagram, Facebook, everything. And you gave them to her? I asked, trying to keep my tone light. He shrugged. I've got nothing to hide. I remember staring at him thinking, that's not the point. The point is why she wants them. But I swallowed the opinion because it wasn't my relationship. Mitch was an adult. If he wanted to hand over his privacy like a peace offering, that was his decision. Our routine stayed the same at first. Mitch and I saw each other about 6 times a month. Half were group hangouts, double dates, birthdays, game nights. The other half were just us, lunch, a movie, grabbing coffee after work. Jason was fine with it. He trusted me and he trusted Mitch. That's why, when Felicity started texting me, I didn't panic immediately. The first few times, it was always after she and Mitch had a fight. Her texts would show up late at night, little digital taps on my life, like she was trying to open a door that didn't belong to her. But what she asked, that's what made it strange. Not what kind of gift does Mitch like? Not, is he stressed at work? Instead, she asked things that implied Mitch and I had a past. How did you deal with his moodiness after work? Was he always this messy? How did his parents treat you when you first met them? Each question had this weird assumption inside it, that I had lived with him, slept beside him, built a life with him. Every time I corrected her. Mitch and I have been friends since we were 5, I'd write. We've never dated. I don't know those things. You should ask him. She'd go quiet. Then a week later, another question. Another attempt to wedge me into a story that wasn't mine. Eventually, I stopped responding when the questions got too personal. I told myself, she's insecure. She'll settle down. It's not your job to fix their relationship. But ignoring her didn't make it go away. It just made her bolder. And the week everything exploded, I thought it was going to be one of those harmless check-ins. She texted me casually. I asked how she was. She said, I'm in pain. My heart jumped. I pictured an accident, a medical emergency, something serious. So I asked, concerned, what's wrong? And then my phone filled with a message that made my face burn with shock. Paragraph after paragraph about her sexual dissatisfaction with Mitch, comparing him to past partners, explaining intimate details I never consented to know. I felt like someone had thrown open a bathroom door while I was inside. I typed back immediately. I'm not comfortable with this. Please talk to Mitch or a close friend about something this personal. I thought that would be the end. Instead, it was the match. Within minutes, she called. And the second I answered, she said in this cold, satisfied voice, this was a test, and now I know. I sat there, gripping my phone, trying to understand. A test? I repeated, because sometimes your brain needs to hear words twice before it accepts they're real. To see if you're in love with him, she snapped. And your reaction tells me everything. My stomach dropped. I told her the truth, fast, firm, clear. Mitch is my best friend. I love him like family. I'm in a relationship with Jason. I'm not interested in Mitch that way, and I never have been. She laughed, sharp and ugly. You're immature, she said. You don't even realize what you feel. Then she threatened, softly, like she was enjoying it. I could tell Mitch about this conversation, she said, and we'll see what he thinks. The implication was obvious. She could twist it, shape it, make me the villain. I said, go ahead, because I believed Mitch would see through her. I believed our 22 years would be stronger than her insecurity. She hung up. And for the rest of that day, I heard nothing from Mitch. Nothing from her, just silence, heavy and waiting. I knew Mitch had his certification exam the next day, the kind of exam that can change your career path. I told myself, don't dump drama on him now. Let him focus. So I waited. And when I couldn't find his profile the next day, when my call went straight to voicemail, that's when the fear sharpened into something real. Because suddenly, it wasn't about Felicity being inappropriate. It was about the possibility that she had locked me out of my best friend's life, and that Mitch didn't even know. Or worse, that she'd convinced him I was exactly what she wanted me to look like. A temptation, a threat, a liar. And the most terrifying part? For the first time in my life, I couldn't reach Mitch to fix it. I just had to sit with the ache of not knowing what he believed about me. The silence lasted 8 hours. 8 hours doesn't sound long until it's coming from someone who's been a constant in your life for more than 2 decades. I kept checking my phone like it might suddenly apologize, Like my missed calls would rearrange themselves into a reply if I stared long enough. Every vibration made my heart jump. Every notification that wasn't Mitch felt like a small rejection. I replayed every interaction with Felicity in my head, frame by frame, searching for the exact moment things tipped from awkward into dangerous. The questions she asked weren't random. I saw that now. They were probes. She wasn't curious. She was building a case. Each question framed Mitch and me as former lovers, roommates, partners. And every time I corrected her, she didn't adjust her understanding. She just stored the information, or pretended to. I realized something else too, something that made my chest tighten. She only ever texted me when she and Mitch were fighting. Never to say hello, never to ask about my life, never to include me in anything neutral or kind. Only when she was spiraling, only when she needed ammunition. At the time, I'd told myself I was being compassionate, that she was insecure, maybe struggling, and it wasn't my place to shut her down harshly. I thought redirecting her, talk to Mitch, was the mature choice. Now I wondered if my politeness had looked like guilt to someone already determined to see me as the enemy. I also couldn't ignore how much access she had to Mitch's life. The passwords. That thought kept coming back, heavier every time. She didn't just have his phone in her hand. She had his digital identity, his messages, his friend list, his ability to reach people, or not. And suddenly, the fact that I couldn't find him online didn't feel like coincidence. I tried calling again, straight to voicemail. I left another message, this one slower, calmer, carefully neutral. Hey, I don't know what's going on, but something weird happened with Felicity. Please call me when you can. I hated how it sounded, vague, almost guilty, like I was the one hiding something. Jason noticed before I said anything. He was sitting across from me on the couch, watching me spiral quietly. He didn't interrupt at first, just waited until I put my phone down with a frustrated sigh. Something wrong? He asked. I hesitated. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I didn't want to pull him into something that felt so absurd it barely made sense out loud. I think Mitch's girlfriend did something, I finally said. I can't reach him, and I'm blocked on his social media. Jason's eyebrows drew together, not in jealousy, not in suspicion, but concern. That's not normal, he said carefully. No, I agreed. It's really not. I told him everything then. The questions, the texts, the call, the accusation, the test. Jason listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening the further I went. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. She sounds controlling. I laughed once, bitter. That's putting it nicely. What do you think she told Mitch? He asked. That was the question I'd been avoiding. I don't know, I admitted. And that's what scares me. Because if Felicity had already decided I was a threat, the truth wouldn't matter. She could frame anything, my discomfort, my boundaries, even my silence, as proof. And if she had access to Mitch's accounts? The thought hit me so hard I felt dizzy. What if she blocked me from his account? I said out loud. What if he doesn't even know I tried to reach him? Jason didn't dismiss it. He didn't say I was overreacting. He just nodded slowly. That's possible. That night I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind filled in worst-case scenarios. What if she showed him a version of events where I looked inappropriate? What if she twisted my refusal to talk about sex into jealousy? What if she'd already convinced him that I was secretly in love with him? And worse, what if he believed her? Because no matter how strong our history was, people are vulnerable when they're tired, stressed, and emotionally invested in someone who claims to be protecting them. The next morning, I woke up with that hollow, anxious feeling behind my ribs, the one that makes food seem optional and time feel distorted. Still nothing from Mitch. I tried not to catastrophize. He had his exam. He could be exhausted. He could have fallen asleep early. But something felt off. 22 years teaches you a person's patterns. And this wasn't one of his. I caught myself wondering if I'd made a mistake by not confronting Felicity more directly earlier. Maybe ignoring her texts made me seem evasive. Maybe, from her perspective, I looked like someone hiding something. That self-blame crept in quietly, the way it always does. If you'd handled this better, if you'd set firmer boundaries sooner, if you'd just shut it down instead of hoping it would resolve itself. By the time my phone finally rang, my nerves were shot. When I saw Mitch's name on the screen, my heart jumped into my throat. I answered immediately. And the first thing he said, confused, exhausted, and sharp, was, "What the hell happened?" In that moment, I knew two things at once. He had no idea what I was talking about. And whatever Felicity had done, it had already caused damage. We met at Mitch's apartment that evening. Jason came with me, not because I needed backup, but because my legs felt unsteady and I didn't trust myself to walk into that conversation alone. Mitch opened the door looking like someone who'd been wrung out and left to dry. Eyes red, hair rumpled, shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen on him before. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "I was dead after the exam. I crashed for 14 hours." 14 hours. The missing time slid into place, but the tension didn't ease. Inside, the apartment felt off. Not messy, just heavy, like the air had absorbed too much shouting recently and hadn't figured out how to let it go. We sat at the small dining table. Jason took the chair slightly back, giving Mitch and me space, but staying close enough to ground me. Mitch rubbed his face with both hands. I woke up to dozens of messages from Felicity, breaking up with me, telling me I was choosing you over her, telling me I wasn't allowed to see you anymore. My stomach dropped. "I couldn't find you anywhere," I said quietly. "I thought you blocked me." Mitch frowned. "I didn't." He pulled out his phone, opened Facebook, and froze. My name wasn't there. Jason's wasn't either. Several other people were missing from his friend list, mostly women, a few men. Mitch's breathing changed. Shorter, sharper. "She blocked people from my account," he said slowly, without telling me. The words hung between us like something fragile and sharp. "That's not all," I said, my voice tight. "She called me. She said the conversation about your sex life was a test." Mitch's head snapped up. "She did what?" I showed him everything. The texts, the timestamps, my responses, the call log. He scrolled in silence, his face draining of color. When he finished, he set the phone down carefully. Too carefully. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I had no idea she did this to you." But even as he said it, I could see the conflict behind his eyes. Not doubt exactly, but shock. The kind that makes you want to believe there's an explanation that doesn't end everything. That's when Felicity started calling. Once, twice, 3 times. Mitch ignored it at first. Then he sighed and stepped outside to answer. He came back 20 minutes later, looking older. "Jason," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "can you give us a minute?" Jason hesitated, then nodded and moved to the balcony. The door slid shut behind him. Mitch looked at me, voice low. "She says she feels threatened by you." I stared at him. "I've never given her a reason." "I know," he said quickly. "I know, but she's convinced there's something more." "Convinced," I repeated, or determined. He didn't answer. A few days later, he told me he wasn't ready to end things. Instead, he wanted couples counseling. "She has anxiety," he said. "Abandonment issues. She says she'll work on it." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him. I wanted to tell him that insecurity doesn't justify manipulation. But I didn't. I told him the truth instead. That behavior is a red flag. Accessing your accounts, blocking people, accusing me of things that aren't real. That's control, Mitch. He nodded. I know. But he still chose to try. So I made a choice of my own. I set a boundary. "I support you," I said, "but I'm not comfortable being around her anymore." He agreed without hesitation. For a few weeks, things felt manageable, until the cafe. I was having lunch with my mom when I saw them at a table across the room. I didn't approach, I just watched. Felicity showed Mitch something on her phone, and his reaction told me everything. His face flushed, his jaw clenched. He stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. They argued in sharp, angry whispers before storming out. That night, Mitch called me, his voice shaking. "She made fake texts," he said. "Messages between you and me. Romantic? Sexual?" I closed my eyes. "She said a friend hacked my phone," he continued. "But the timestamps don't match. The language isn't ours. And some things never happened." When he confronted her, she finally admitted it. It was a test. To protect him. To prove he was being betrayed. That was the moment everything snapped into clarity. And the moment he ended it. But the damage had already been done. Because when someone is willing to fabricate reality to control a narrative, you don't walk away clean. You walk away looking over your shoulder. When Mitch told me he'd ended it, I didn't feel relief the way I expected. I felt heavy, like my body had been holding its breath for weeks and suddenly didn't know how to inhale normally again. "I'm sorry," he said over the phone, voice thick. I should have listened sooner. There it was, the apology I'd never demanded but needed to hear. "It's okay," I told him, because I meant it. You wanted to believe the best in someone. That part was true. The harder truth, the one I didn't say out loud, was that believing the best in the wrong person can still hurt the people who love you. For a few days after the breakup, I stayed on edge. Every buzz of my phone made my shoulders tense. I double-checked my privacy settings, changed passwords, logged out of old devices. Jason and I had long conversations about digital security that felt surreal, like we were preparing for a storm we couldn't see yet. Mitch sounded ashamed when we talked. She keeps switching between apologizing and blaming you, he said, begging me to come back, then saying I chose you over her. That sentence stuck with me, because it wasn't about choosing. She had framed our friendship like a competition, and once that mindset took hold, no amount of reassurance could undo it. A couple of days later, the messages started. From her. At first, they were angry, accusing me of orchestrating the breakup, of manipulating Mitch behind the scenes. I didn't respond. I blocked her number. She created new accounts. New messages, new accusations. I blocked those too. Mitch told me he'd threatened to file for a restraining order if she didn't stop. That finally seemed to slow her down. But the damage lingered. At work, I caught myself flinching when someone glanced at my phone. At home, I replayed conversations, wondering if I'd missed something obvious earlier. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from being accused of something you didn't do. One that doesn't go away just because the truth is on your side. Jason was steady through all of it. He never once questioned my loyalty, never implied I'd led Mitch on, never asked me to prove anything. One night, as we sat on the couch in silence, he reached for my hand. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said quietly. "Someone else's insecurity isn't your responsibility." I leaned into that sentence like it was a railing. A few weeks passed. Then Mitch told me she'd started dating someone new. The harassment stopped almost immediately. Just like that. It was chilling how easily she redirected her obsession, how quickly I went from enemy to irrelevant. 2 months later, life felt normal again. Mitch and I went back to our usual rhythm. Coffee, movie nights, long conversations about nothing important. The difference was subtle but real. We were both more careful now, more aware of boundaries, less willing to ignore discomfort for the sake of peace. One unexpected outcome surprised all of us. Jason and Mitch got closer. After watching how Mitch handled the fallout, how he took responsibility, cut contact, and protected our friendship, Jason's respect for him deepened. They started hanging out without me, watching sports, trading jokes like they'd always meant to be friends in their own right. It felt like something good had grown out of something ugly. Looking back, I see where things might have changed if I'd confronted Felicity directly earlier, if I'd drawn a firmer line instead of hoping politeness would diffuse her insecurity. But I also know this. You can't reason someone out of a story they're determined to believe. Last weekend, I hosted a small gathering. Just close friends, laughter spilling into the kitchen, the kind of night that reminds you why connection matters. Mitch was there. Jason was there. No tension, no tests, no accusations. As I watched them joke across the room, I felt something settle in my chest. 22 years of friendship doesn't disappear because someone else can't tolerate it. And I'm grateful Mitch saw that before it was too late. Because sometimes surviving a storm isn't about winning. It's about recognizing who stays standing with you when the wind tries to tear everything apart. I thought the worst of it was over. That once Felicity was out of Mitch's life, the tension would slowly dissolve, leaving behind nothing more than an uncomfortable memory we'd eventually joke about. I was wrong. The escalation didn't come loudly. It crept in sideways, through small disruptions, half-truths, and the lingering consequences of someone who refused to accept the end of the story. It started with Mitch. He didn't say it outright at first, but I could hear it in his voice, how cautious he'd become. Like he was measuring every sentence, making sure it couldn't be twisted or misinterpreted later. "She keeps telling people I left her for you," he admitted one night, sounding exhausted. Not directly, just heavily implied. My chest tightened. Who? Mutual friends, a couple of coworkers, even her sister apparently. There it was, the quiet smear campaign. No screenshots this time, no fake messages, just suggestion, tone, carefully planted doubt. "She tells them I was emotionally dependent on you," he continued, "that you couldn't let go, that she was protecting me." Protecting. The word made my jaw clench. Because that's how manipulation survives. It disguises itself as concern. I asked him if anyone had reached out to me directly. "Not yet," he said, "but I can tell some people are acting different." I noticed it too. Friends who used to text casually now took longer to respond. Invitations came with disclaimers. Conversations felt slightly guarded, like everyone was quietly deciding what version of the story they believed. No one accused me outright, which somehow made it worse. At the same time, Felicity didn't stay completely silent. She couldn't. She sent one last message from a new number I didn't recognize. I knew it was her before I even opened it. "You won't admit what you did, but I see you now. I hope you're happy." I stared at the screen for a long moment before deleting it. No reply. No explanation. No defense. I was done participating in a narrative that wasn't mine. Jason noticed the shift in me before I articulated it. "You're pulling inward," he said gently one evening, "like you're bracing." "I'm just tired," I admitted. "I feel like I'm being watched, judged, and I didn't even do anything." That's the cruelest part of being framed. Not legally, not dramatically, but socially. You don't get a courtroom. You get whispers. Mitch tried to counter it in his own way. He corrected people when they hinted. He told the truth plainly when asked. He stopped sugarcoating Felicity's behavior and named it for what it was. "She crossed boundaries," he said. "She lied. She tried to isolate me." Some people nodded and accepted it. Others looked uncomfortable, because acknowledging that meant admitting they'd been wrong to doubt. That's when I felt it, the shift inside myself. For years, my instinct had been to smooth things over, to stay polite, to avoid confrontation, to trust that being reasonable would protect me. This time it didn't, and I realized something unsettling but necessary. Being quiet doesn't make you safe, it just makes you easier to talk over. I stopped apologizing for the discomfort the situation caused others. When someone asked carefully phrased questions, "So, what really happened?" I answered calmly, clearly, and without defensiveness. I set boundaries. She violated them. Mitch ended the relationship. No embellishment, no emotional labor. Just truth. And slowly, the air began to change. People who mattered stayed. People who wanted drama drifted. Mitch started reclaiming parts of his life Felicity had quietly overtaken, reconnecting with friends she'd pushed away, reestablishing routines that didn't revolve around managing someone else's anxiety. Watching him do that was bittersweet, because it confirmed what I'd suspected all along. She hadn't just targeted me. I'd simply been the easiest angle. And as everything escalated to its final stretch, harassment fading, rumors losing momentum, reality reasserting itself, I felt something solid take root inside me. Not anger, not fear, clarity. I couldn't control what Felicity believed. I couldn't control what everyone else chose to assume. But I could control one thing. I would never again minimize my own boundaries to keep someone else comfortable. And that realization, that quiet internal shift, was the beginning of the end of her hold over any part of my life. The lowest point didn't come during the fake texts. It didn't come when Felicity blocked me, accused me, or tried to erase me from Mitch's life. It came later, when everything was technically over and I realized how deeply it had still cut. I was alone in my apartment one night, Jason working late, the TV on, but muted because I wasn't really watching it. I'd spent the day functioning, answering emails, smiling at coworkers, nodding through conversations that felt distant and slightly unreal. From the outside, I looked fine. Inside, I felt hollow. That's the part people don't talk about when situations like this resolve cleanly. When the liar is exposed, when the relationship ends, when the truth is technically on your side. Your nervous system doesn't get the memo. I kept replaying moments, not because I missed Felicity, but because my brain was trying to understand how close I'd come to losing something irreplaceable. Mitch and I had survived childhood, distance, adulthood, relationships, and time. And one insecure person with a phone almost cracked that foundation. What if Mitch hadn't noticed the inconsistencies? What if he'd believed her just a little longer? What if the timing had been different? If he hadn't been exhausted from his exam? If I hadn't shown him the messages so clearly? I hated that the answers scared me, because they proved something uncomfortable. Truth doesn't always win on its own. Sometimes it needs timing, evidence, luck. That realization sat heavy in my chest. For the first time in years, I questioned my own judgment, not in people I date, but in how I handle conflict. Had I been too passive, too accommodating, too eager to be the bigger person? There's a specific loneliness that comes from being falsely accused of something intimate, something that cuts at your integrity, your loyalty, your character. It makes you feel exposed, even when nothing actually happened. I felt that exposure acutely. I worried about how people saw me now. I worried that some part of my reputation had been permanently smudged by whispers that would never fully disappear. I worried, quietly, that being close to me might feel risky to others. Jason came home late that night and found me sitting on the floor, back against the couch, staring at nothing. He didn't ask what was wrong. He sat down beside me and leaned his shoulder into mine. "I hate that someone tried to turn your kindness into a weapon," he said softly. That sentence broke something open. I cried, not dramatically, not loudly, just the kind of tears that leak out when you've been holding yourself together for too long. "I didn't do anything wrong," I whispered, like I was still trying to convince myself. "I know," he said, "but it still hurt." That was the dark moment. Not despair, not rage, but the quiet grief of realizing that doing everything right doesn't always protect you from collateral damage. I went to bed that night feeling small in a way I hadn't since I was much younger, like the world was unpredictable and closeness came with invisible risks. But somewhere under that heaviness, something else stirred. A question. One that didn't accuse me, but challenged me. What would it look like to protect myself as fiercely as I protect the people I love? I didn't have the answer yet, but I could feel it forming. And that meant I wasn't stuck, just standing at the edge of something I hadn't fully stepped into before. The shift didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic confrontation, no final message sent, no moment where everything suddenly felt fixed. It happened quietly, through clarity. A few days after that night on the floor, Mitch asked if we could grab coffee. Just the two of us. No heavy agenda, no crisis energy, just normal. We sat at our usual spot by the window, the one where the afternoon light always hits the table just right. For a while, we talked about safe things. Work, his new rock climbing hobby, how badly he'd underestimated how sore his arms would be. Then he went quiet. "I need to say something," he said. I looked at him, steady now, not bracing. "I should have shut this down earlier," he continued. "Not just when she crossed the line with you, but when she started questioning our friendship at all." I waited, let him finish. "I thought if I explained it enough, reassured her enough, she'd feel secure," he said. "But all I did was teach her that pushing worked." That landed. Not as blame, but as recognition. "And I put you in a position where you had to defend something that never needed defending," he added. I hate that. For the first time since all of this began, I didn't rush to comfort him. I didn't minimize it. I didn't say, "It's okay, don't worry about it." Instead, I said the truth. "It hurt," I said calmly, "not because you doubted me, but because you tried to negotiate my place in your life with someone else." He nodded, no defensiveness, no excuses. "I won't do that again," he said, "with anyone." That was the turning point. Not because he promised something, but because I believed him. Because he wasn't trying to preserve peace anymore. He was choosing integrity. Later that week, something else happened. Small, but powerful. A mutual acquaintance made an offhand comment at a gathering. Nothing direct. Just a lightly loaded joke about emotional affairs and best friends. The old version of me would have laughed it off. Let it slide. Absorbed the discomfort so no one else had to feel it. This time I didn't. I met their eyes and said evenly, "That's not funny, and it's not accurate." The room went quiet for a beat. Then the conversation moved on. No argument, no drama, just a boundary, clearly stated. And something inside me settled. I realized then that I wasn't waiting for Felicity to disappear completely. I wasn't waiting for everyone to understand. I wasn't even waiting for time to pass. I was waiting to stop shrinking. The truth was already on my side. What changed was that I finally stood in it. Without apology, without explanation, without trying to soften the edges so others wouldn't feel awkward. That's when the power shifted. Not outward, inward. And once that happened, the rest was just fallout. The fallout didn't explode. It thinned, like smoke after a fire, lingering in some corners, gone completely in others. Felicity stopped trying to contact me entirely once Mitch followed through on his warning about legal boundaries. Whatever narrative she'd been clinging to found a new place to attach itself, and I was no longer useful to it. That alone felt like a quiet victory. Not because she lost, but because I was finally free from her orbit. Mitch felt the consequences more directly. He told me how awkward things became in their shared social circles. People who'd nodded along to Felicity's version now had to reconcile it with the facts. The fake texts, the account access, the controlling behavior she'd admitted to herself. Some apologized. Some avoided the subject. Some simply disappeared from his life. "I guess that tells me who was really here for me," he said one evening, half resigned, half relieved. It told me the same. The friends who mattered didn't ask me to explain myself again and again. They didn't request proof. They didn't say, "Well, I can see both sides." They accepted the truth and moved forward with us. Jason noticed the difference in me, too. "You're lighter," he said one night as we cleaned up after dinner. Not happier exactly, just steadier. He was right. I wasn't riding the emotional spikes anymore. I wasn't scanning rooms for judgment. I wasn't preemptively defending myself in my head. I'd let the truth do its quiet work. And it did. Mitch rebuilt his routines. He started climbing regularly, throwing his energy into something that demanded presence and trust. He stopped over-explaining his friendships to people who didn't deserve explanations. He also apologized, once more, but differently this time. Not emotionally, practically. He checked in before bringing new people into shared spaces. He asked, not out of obligation, but respect. It mattered. As for Felicity, I heard only one last thing through the grapevine. She'd moved on quickly, telling anyone who'd listen that the breakup was mutual and that she'd dodged a bullet. I smiled when I heard that, because people who dodge bullets don't need to rewrite the story afterward. They just walk away. The real fallout, though, the kind that mattered, was internal. I stopped absorbing discomfort that wasn't mine. I stopped treating my boundaries like negotiable preferences. And I stopped confusing politeness with self-protection. Nothing dramatic changed on the outside, but everything shifted on the inside. And that's how I knew the story was finally ending. Not with chaos, not with revenge, but with a quiet return to myself. It's strange how something that nearly breaks you can end without a bang. No courtroom, no final confrontation, no satisfying villain monologue. Just peace, slowly settling where anxiety used to live. A few months have passed now. Mitch is still in my life in the way that feels right, solid, uncomplicated, honest. We don't tiptoe anymore. We don't over-explain. Our friendship survived not because it was perfect, but because it was real enough to withstand pressure. Jason and I are steady, stronger, actually. Watching him trust me without hesitation, watching him stand firm without trying to control the situation, reminded me what healthy love looks like. It doesn't demand tests. It doesn't manufacture threats. It doesn't need to isolate you to feel secure. As for Felicity, I don't think about her much anymore. Not because I've forgiven her, maybe that'll come later, but because she no longer has a role in my story. And that's the real ending. This experience taught me something I wish I'd learned earlier. Kindness without boundaries isn't kindness. It's an invitation. An invitation for the wrong people to step closer than they deserve. I learned that avoiding conflict doesn't keep the peace. It just delays the reckoning. That being the bigger person shouldn't require shrinking yourself, and that you don't owe access, explanations, or emotional labor to someone determined to misunderstand you. Most importantly, I learned that protecting your relationship sometimes means being willing to make other people uncomfortable. And that's okay, because the people who truly belong in your life won't need you to prove your innocence. They won't need tests. They won't need to rewrite reality to feel secure. They'll trust you. And if they don't, that's not a failure. That's information. So if you're listening to this and recognizing yourself, if someone is questioning your integrity, pushing your boundaries, or trying to isolate you under the guise of concern, please hear this. You're not dramatic. You're not imagining it. And you don't have to stay quiet to keep the peace. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is tell the truth plainly and let the fallout land where it belongs. Because calm after chaos isn't empty. It's earned. And once you step into it, you don't go back.